So for school, I have to read this book called Familia Romana by Hans Orberg, and it's my Latin book. So I'm going to read 2 paragraphs of Latin and then translate. Taberna Romana. Ecce taberna Romana, in que gemma et margaritae multae sunt. Cuius est haec taberna, albini est. Albinus hanc tabernum habet. Qui tabernum habet tabernarius est. Albinus est tabernarius Romanus, qui gemmas et margaritas vendit. Alii taberni libros vendunt, alii malae pira, alii rosas et lilia. Gemmae et margaritae sunt ornamenta. Annulus cum gemma ornamentum pulcrum est. Etiam linea cum margaritis ornamentum est. Linea sine margaritis non est ornamentum. A Roman shop. This is a Roman shop in which there are gems and pearls. Whose shop is this? This is Albinus' shop. This is Albinus' shop. Whoever possesses a shop is a shopkeeper. Albinus is a Roman shopkeeper who sells pearls and gems. Other shopkeepers sell books, others sell apples and pears, others sell roses and lilies. Gems and pearls are jewelry. A ring with a gem is a beautiful piece of jewelry. A string with pearls is jewelry. A string without pearls is not jewelry. The next book I'm going to share with you is The Mystery of the Periodic Table by Benjamin D. Weiger. I don't know if I said that right. It's about the table of elements and how it was created. So originally it started out, alchemists were trying to figure out how different substances in the world could be mixed and unmixed to create different things. So first question, why am I reading this book? How does it fit in with all of my other books? It's beginner's chemistry, and I'm doing beginner's chemistry for school. For this year 6, we do beginner's chemistry. So it fits in because it's teaching me all the beginning principles of chemistry. The last chapter is hard. The last chapter is complicated, and I had to read it about 3 times before I actually got what I was doing. But the first chapters just begin, and it tells us all the history and who figured out different parts of the table of elements, who figured out that what an element is, what a compound is, all of those things. What were the main points or ideas? The main points and ideas are just the table of elements, and like I said, it's really funny because one person would figure something out, and then another person would figure something out, and then he would try to figure something else out, but he'd mess it up. And the next person that came along would clean up the mess that the other person made and fix all that. And then he would start another thing and mess that up. So each person kind of had to clean up for the person after him. It didn't all come together all magically like you see on the gorgeous table right here. Can you show it? My table, I haven't finished it yet, but I have to draw a picture for each element that I do. My favorite one, Mom showed Platinum. Platinum is my favorite because Taylor Swift's Fearless album is Platinum Edition. Mom said I had to put a picture for each one, and that's what I thought of. Okay, so what did I like or dislike? I liked, again, everything in the book. I don't think there's a book I don't like. I liked how it was set up and how he explained everything. I didn't like the last chapter. Was really, really complicated. And I guess chemistry is complicated in and of itself, no matter how you present it. But the author did a good job in trying to make it clear. You just have to read a lot of sentences again and again until it clicks. Would I recommend this book to a friend? Yes, it's a good book. Just, it's complicated. You have to know what you're doing. Okay, and then this fits in with this book, so I'm going to kind of use the same video for this. But this is The Elements by Theodore Gray, and I love this book. This is one of my favorite books that I did for school this year. And For each element, there's a page, and there goes my bookmark. And it tells about the element, and it has pictures of different places where the element is preserved. So this is oxygen, so it has the oxygen passenger system, fake like oxygen that you breathe out of. I think that's a water molecule, I do so believe. In element collections, pure oxygen can only be represented by a seemingly empty bottle. That's funny. So, and then it tells you, I haven't used this yet, but it tells you its atomic weight, its density, all that good stuff. Why am I reading this book? How does it fit in with all my other books? Well, the only book it actually fits in with is this one. And it's just beginners. I mean, you can't do chemistry unless you know all the elements, because chemistry is about the elements, and the elements are the very basic. Elements make up everything. Elements are the substances. The elements aren't a mix of different substances. They're pure substance. Elements are. So, what were the main points and ideas? Just the elements. What did I like or dislike? I love this book. It's just a really good book. There wasn't anything I didn't like. In a couple places, it did make references to evolution, but it didn't try to push it. So, I mean, that was the only thing I might have not liked about it. But I love how it's presented, the format, how it clearly explains about all the elements. When you're trying to put it, because for my table, I had to draw a picture for each element. For some of the really rare, unknown elements, it's hard to think of a picture. For them, plutonium had to be, that's actually a pacemaker, because the only legal way to possess plutonium is in a pacemaker, because back in the day, for like 15 people, they put plutonium in their pacemakers, and we can't trace where the plutonium is. So that's the only way it's legal to possess plutonium. Would I recommend this book to a friend? Yes, any friend. I mean, I think, okay, maybe not a 3-year-old, but like an 8-year-old could definitely understand this book. It's very clear. Maybe some of the later ones that are artificial or something like that would be harder to understand, but the ones that I've done are really easy to understand, and they're really great. This is the next book that I'm going to show you. It's called Never Give In by Stephen Mansfield, and it's a biography of Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister of Great Britain for several terms, and he lived during the early 1900s, which was World War I and World War II, which is the time period I'm learning in history for year 6, first term. So Winston was a character. He was funny. He had a very interesting life. His parents were nobility, and in the early 1900s, nobility didn't really play with their kids or get to know their kids. They saw them every evening at dinner just to kiss them goodnight. So Churchill was not really, never really knew his parents, never really was on good terms with them. He was extremely good friends with his nanny. He was a very strong Christian. He went through a time period when he was an atheist, but he fought in India during that time period, and he got taken prisoner, escaped from the prisoner ship, and happened to come to a house in the area, and he knocked on the door and asked for entrance. He said that he was a British, and the people in the house said they were the only British people, loyal to Great Britain for miles. If he had knocked to their next door neighbor, he would have been taken back to his prisoner camp. So that led him to believe in destiny and eventually to God. Why am I reading this book? How does it fit in with all of my other books? Like I said, he lived in the early 1900s. He was a very great leader, and he was staged a lot of battles in World War II, which was a very important time period. And he helped resolve the peace treaty and was just a very famous person. So he's very important to learn about him for history of World War II. What were the main points and ideas? The first half of the book is his biography, so telling about his life, when he was born, his family, his children, his wife, his marriage, his home, all of those, his personal, aspects. And his public, what he did for the public. And then the second half is called Pillars of Leadership. And there's like 2 pages on each one of his greatest characteristics. So compassion, humor, the mastery of self-examination, character. So those chapters kind of take you deeper into each one of his characteristics and where he got them, most of them being direct from the Bible. What did I like or dislike? I liked learning about Winston Churchill. He's funny. The only thing I would say I didn't like was near the end chapters of the book, the Pillars of Leadership, the last probably like 3 or 4 or 5 got really old. It felt like the author was just saying the same thing over and over again about Churchill. But the 4th question, would I recommend this book to a friend? I would definitely recommend to him, no matter what. It's a great, great book. This is my other book about Winston Churchill. It's not actually listed on the AO website, but it's a very, very good book. I would recommend to read it alongside with the biography of Winston Churchill. It's called Never Give In, The Best of Winston Churchill's Speeches, selected by his grandson, Winston S. Churchill. So, these were written by Churchill. It's his speeches. This book is, it's really fat. You don't have to read all of the speeches in here, but his most famous ones, like the most famous Never Give In speech and some speeches about Russians and all of that good stuff, are very important to fully understand Winston Churchill's character and what he exactly believed in, because you can read biographies all you want, but the best way you're going to get to know somebody is by reading what they actually said. So why am I reading this book? How does it fit in with all of my other books? Well, it fits in, like I said on the last book, because Winston lived in the 1900s and World War II, and I think it's a great addition because it really does help you get to know Winston better. The main points and ideas were his beliefs and what he said, and he had a lot of very strong convictions, and he didn't always say, most of the time he didn't say what the people wanted to hear. He said what he believed was right and what he knew was right. And that did not make him very popular a lot of the time, but he got the job done. What did I like or dislike? I just like reading his speeches. There's a lot of comical, they'll put in parentheses when people laughed, when people said cheers or agreed with something he said out loud. So that was funny. I didn't like, he is British, so some of the words, and it's not common, it's not like you don't understand anything he says, but some of the speeches there were some words that I didn't get, but those are easy to find out what they are. Would I recommend this book to a friend? Definitely, especially if you're reading a Winston Churchill biography. The next book I'm going to tell you about is Plutarch. I read it on the AO website, so I don't have the book. I have a note card that says Plutarch on it. The first question, why am I reading this book? How does it fit in with all of my other books? This term is kind of an exception because Plutarch writes about ancient leaders in Greece or Rome. Last year I had to read Plutarch, and I wasn't reading ancient history, but this year I am, so I'm reading about some of these people that Plutarch talks about in history. So this year it fit in with my other books, but last year it didn't. Last year I had to read it because it shows me leadership and how to be a good leader or how to be a bad leader, because most of the people in Plutarch were not good leaders. But the Gracchi, which I'm going to use as an example for the rest of my questions, were good leaders. The Gracchi were tribunes in the Roman government. Tribunes were people elected by the people to kind of protect them, because if not for the tribunes, the nobles would probably pass a lot of laws to help themselves and not the poor people who could not be in the Senate. So the tribunes' jobs were to protect the Roman people and their rights. They stood up for the people. The nobles were steadily getting stronger, and they were steadily trying to make more laws that were helping themselves and harming the people in the process. The Gracchi tried to pass laws to help the people. Their main laws that they passed were to give the people the right to be elected into the Senate, because the Roman world was divided into the nobles, which are the higher, richer class, and the poor people, which were the lower class. And back then you couldn't really move up unless you were in the government, and the poor people weren't allowed to be in the government, so you couldn't move up. The Gracchi, their great deed was to help the people get into the Senate. They passed laws which allowed them to be in the government. The nobles did not like them, and as the Gracchi kept trying to pass more laws that would help the people, the nobles actually murdered them both and threw them into the Tiber River. So they got paid for their good deeds. The main points and ideas of Plutarch are the lives of the Gracchi, and what they did. Their mother Cornelia was a strong figure in their lives. Who liked them, who didn't. What their one of the Gracchi's main friends was actually killed before them for helping them. All of those things put together. So their lives. It's a biography of people and of what they did that was good or bad. What did I like or dislike? I don't like Plutarch that much. I honestly don't really know why. I just don't particularly like reading long biographies of people who eventually didn't really affect the long run of history to my time. But the Gracchi were very interesting to read about. They were very good. They were probably the only really good people I read about in Plutarch. And they actually tried to help, unlike most of the other people you read about in Plutarch who only try to help themselves. Augustus Caesar was also pretty good. Would I recommend this book to a friend? Probably not. I honestly didn't like it very much, but that's just me. It's called Snow Treasure by Marie McSwiggan. It's a true story of kids who live in a little village in Norway. The little village is occupied by the Nazis, and unknown to the Nazis, there in a cave in the village there is $9 million worth of gold. And one of the kids' uncles enlists some of the children to help smuggle the gold onto a ship to get out of Norway so that the Nazis won't get a hold of the money, which could help them torture endless people. The way the uncle decides to do this is by sledding. The children put their money on their sleds, cover it up with a blanket, and pretend to, they sled down hills with the money. The Nazis think they're just having fun, but the kids actually sled down the hills to the seaside, give the money to their uncle who loads it onto the ship. Eventually they sail off to America. Why am I reading this book? How does it fit in with all of my other books? Well, this book was based in the 1940s, so that's during the World War II, and I'm reading about World War II in history, so that's the main way it kind of fits in with everything else. What were the main points and ideas? The main points and ideas were the kids smuggling the gold, the danger, how they actually befriended some of the Nazi soldiers who ended up helping them and sailing to America with them. Well, there was one soldier who sailed to America with them. What did I like or dislike? I liked the book. It's a very good book. I didn't dislike anything. It is a simple book. It's not a hard book at all. So I think this might have actually been a good book for year 5. But this is probably year 6 because of the time period. Would I recommend this book to a friend? Yes, it is an amazing book. This is Iliad, the beautiful index card. This is totally a book. No, I read it on my iPad, so I don't have the actual book, but it works either way. I learn the same stuff. First question, why am I reading this book? How does it fit in with all of my other books? The Iliad is about the Trojan War, which was an actual historical event. The Iliad bumps it up a little bit by telling all the sides of the gods. The Iliad was actually, I think, originally written in Greece, in the ancient times. It was supposed to tell the story of the actual Trojan War. But it's kind of true and kind of not, because the idea of the Trojan War being fought is true, but the side of the gods and a lot of the things that happened between gods and men and how men were killed were not true, because there are no gods. The main points and ideas. So I'm reading this book because I'm learning ancient history, and the Iliad did happen, the Trojan War did happen, and it is actually history. The Trojan War was fought because the most beautiful woman in Greece named Helen was taken away from her true husband and married by another man. And the husband and all of his king friends went to go fight to get Helen back. So that's the basis of the Trojan War. But over time, you kind of forget about it in the story. You don't really hear about what happens to Helen once the Trojan War is ended. The focus is more about the gods and the fights between people in the Greek camp. The Greeks being the people fighting for Trojan, and the Trojan and for fighting for Helen, and the Trojans being the people who lived in Troy, which is the city where Helen was being kept captive. What were the main points and ideas? The main points and ideas were really about the people, because the example I'm going to use is of King Agamemnon and Achilles. King Agamemnon, when the city of Troy was raided one time, some of the girls were taken out. Helen was not among them, so the war did not end at this, but the girls that were taken out were split evenly among the kings as concubines or slave girls or whatever. Achilles got the most beautiful girl by chance. It wasn't purposely giving Achilles the most beautiful girl. Agamemnon was jealous, stole the girl. Achilles got really mad, ran away, told his mom. Eventually all the gods got really mad at Agamemnon until he finally said, I'm not going to be cursed by all the gods because I took a girl away. So he made up with Achilles. Achilles came back, got killed in the Trojan Wars. So for him, this whole thing was never ended good. So the main points and ideas were really about the people. It wasn't so much about the war. The war was a kind of a main part. They fought a lot, but it was really about the people. What did I like or dislike? I liked the parts about the people because I liked learning about what they were thought of, who were like the heroes, what their characteristics were. Ulysses, who is later mentioned in the Odyssey, was considered the wisest of them. Agamemnon was considered the most valiant. Menelaus was considered also very valiant. I did not like reading about all the gory fighting and how they got killed. Just not me. Would I recommend this book to a friend? Yes. Yes, it's a good book. I mean, it's alright.